This is the Meaning Business Podcast, your go-to source for business tips, advice, growth, and exit strategies, hosted by Bruce Kudry and Peter Spinder. Each episode, we bring you real stories, expert insights, and practical advice to help you succeed in today's market. Let's dive in.
So, Pete, have you heard the quote by Justin Trudeau about technology?
No.
And the way things are changing? He says, you've got to read it. The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that,
That is so
I
good.
love it. When I heard it, it really made me feel old,
Yep.
and it made me think, shit, am I prepared to handle that?
Yep.
Am I prepared to deal with change being at a faster rate than what it has been?
It's scary.
It's already like every day. I'm like, what's going on?
Absolutely. So there's a reason why we've got to have this conversation. There's a really important reason why pausing and thinking and accepting change and accepting what's happening in the world is important. And it goes back to this analogy where imagine that you're walking in a forest and you come across this person that's trying to chop a tree, this big tree, right? And he's just chopping away with the axe and nothing's really happening. He's just chopping the tree. And you're thinking to yourself, that axe is clearly blunt. It's not sharp. Why is this person not stopping and sharpening? Why is he persisting when it's not working? So you decide to go up to that person and tap him on the shoulder and say, excuse me, why don't you pause and sharpen the axe so that you can actually, chop the tree faster? And he just turns around and looks at you and says, just leave me alone. I'm busy trying to chop this tree down. Haven't got time. I'm too busy. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that I see with business owners making in their business is that they're too busy being busy, too busy stuck in the forest, not seeing the whole thing. They're stuck looking at the tree, chopping the trees down. The way that we've been operating for the past 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be, that's the way that they continue to operate despite all these changes. And
because a lot of people love that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah. But the problem with that is that when you're busy doing the busyness and when you're busy with the way that you've always done it, you're actually then closing yourself off for the opportunities. And you close the organization off from actual growth. And that's one of the reasons why technology adoption can be so slow.
The irony is that it's taking you longer to cut that tree with the blunt axe. If you did take the time to stop and replace it with a chainsaw, you'd get it done so much quickly.
And that whole attitude of, the way that I've been doing business for so long is such a, it holds you back. I remember a few months ago, we were doing some work with the council out in regional Queensland, and it was part of a mentoring program. They assigned a farmer to us to work with them on some things in their business. And when I reached out to this individual, I said to him, listen, here's the process. Expect from us an email coming to you with the link to complete an online diagnostic form. And he just says to me, oh, I don't use email. I haven't got email. So does that mean I need to get an email account? I'm like, yeah. This is only a few months ago. This is 2024, right? Wow. So that's like the extreme, but you can see that people are just used to the way that they do things.
Yeah, but you've just reminded me, way back in the 80s, I was talking to a guy, a business owner, I won't mention the name, who said that's the way we've always done it. And it really irked me the way he said, no, mate, we're happy, that's the way we've always done it. A year later, that business is gone. And it was because they wouldn't make the simple changes to adopt new technologies and new ways of doing business. They were gone.
Absolutely.
And it was a dominant, and the market dominant company in their space,
Everything's changing so quickly. The fact that if you're not going to adopt and you're not going to evolve, then you're going to be left behind. Now, we were talking about AI earlier, and a lot of people think that AI is going to do people out of a job. And my response to that is, no, it's not going to do you out of a job. It's people like me that's going to do you out of a job. It's people that understand technology, that are willing to adopt and embrace technology. Most importantly, and this is the thing that we're finding, especially with the rapid pace of technology, two things need to happen that's critical in an organization. Number one is the business owner needs to understand the technology adoption is a phase of experimentation. So you've got to be willing to experiment, throw the dice, fail, learn from the mistakes, keep evolving, keep testing different things, because there's so many tools and technologies and they're so new that we just don't really know yet. All the different ways that you could use a ChatGPT, or all the different ways you could use a new type of machinery that's reliant on whatever new technology that's come out in your industry. And the only real way to learn about that is to experiment, is to be willing to go, you know what, we're going to invest time, the money, the energy, not just me as a business owner, but my people. So that's absolutely critical. So that's point number one. But the number two thing, the other thing that needs to happen is business owners need to realize that it's a team effort within the business. It's a collective effort. They need to embrace the fact that they've got to be willing to let go some of the ownership and be willing to let their team go out and actually explore and actually read up on the latest things and watch the latest YouTube videos, releases on from GPT if we're talking about AI or whatever it might be happening in their industry, so that those individuals collectively can consume more interesting information, can bring it back to the table and say, hey, Bruce, listen, I watched this video and I had a read of this article. What do you think of this tool? Maybe this is something we should be looking at for our business. What are your thoughts? How do you think this could impact our industry?
So what you're saying, I think, is because things are never going to change as slowly as they have, it's only going to get faster. Any business, every business should be constantly evolving and experimenting and trialing adoption of different ideas, technologies and processes just to make it quicker and faster and more efficient. So it's not like no, we'll leave it as it is and then we'll try that later.
No,
It's got to be every day.
It's continuous.
Consciously.
It's continuous.
You're right.
The whole tech landscape has meant that the way that we conduct business, especially if we want to evolve with the technology, we've got to be continuously consuming it. We've got to be continuously playing with it, iterating it, experimenting with it. And that's a big ask, because I can hear, the business owners listening here at the moment, they're probably thinking, oh, well, that's well and good, but you know what? We're already maxed out. I can't get enough staff. I've got this, I've got that. And this is where I go, well, hang on a second. That means your axe is potentially blunt. And I'm sorry for calling it out like that, but it might just be that the reason, and we've got client engagements at the moment where we are at the moment looking at how we're going to use technology so that the bluntness becomes sharp, and what you can do with your current team is going to it's going to increase. So you're going to have more effectiveness, you're going to have more efficiency simply through the use of technology.
Yeah. So if I'm a business owner, you're talking to me about that, being devil's advocate, I'm going to say to you, but Pete, it's changing so quickly. If you get me to change from where we are here to this, it's only going to be leapfrogged by something else eventually anyway. What's the point? So let's say I own a hotel.
Yep.
And you suggest to me that we adopt that payment process where you have a QR code on your table and so on. And something else comes along like a chip or something that's more efficient. And it might cost me $7 or $20,000 to implement that first piece of technology. If that becomes redundant within 3 or 6 months, what's the point? How do we know what the right way to implement is?
Well, the answer to that is you've got two choices: do something or do nothing. And so if you don't do anything, what will happen is those 3 months will become 6, 9, 12, and before you know it, 5, 10 years have gone by, and you are so far behind that the cost to catch up is extraordinarily hard. There's a big gap in terms of the knowledge and capabilities and skills inside the business. More importantly, you've lost market traction, because I can tell you those that are aware of this are moving forward at a faster pace. So doing something is far better than doing nothing. What I can say, though, from experience and seeing this across Australia-wide and doing my research for my PhD studies, I can tell you now is that digital adoption and capabilities and skills generally in Australia is quite low. We're I'd say 5, 6 years behind the US in terms of the sort of technologies that we use, the sort of technologies they use. In fact, we're behind countries like India, for example, in terms of adoption.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And obviously China. Yeah.
So I guess the other part of the response to that challenge is to say, well, you know what, just doing an extra 5 or 10% is already going to put you ahead of everyone else.
But I'm still on this timing thing. So a lot of people who went from other accounting programs to Xero benefited by jumping onto Xero, and it's proven to be probably a sustainable thing. Nothing else has really surpassed it yet, and they've continued to evolve and add on, which is a good thing. But there's been other early adopters of other things where you've probably made the wrong decision and you've got to go back and change again. Can't think of an example. But so that early adoption, don't you think it's wise just to give it a little bit of time sometimes, just to look at it and wait and then jump?
I think it really goes back to your risk appetite. If you're willing to take that risk and you're the sort of person like me where I like to be an early adopter, I like to play with the technology and I like to fiddle with it, that's perfectly fine. But if you're not, then you know what you just said before is perfectly fine as well. There's no reason why you couldn't just go, you know what, let's just wait it out and see how it's all going to play out. And that works perfectly well if the business owner hasn't got that strong entrepreneurial mindset, or maybe they're just a lot more risk averse.
Yeah,
But ultimately, regardless of the situation, you either evolve or you don't evolve.
exactly. So
And
you can't do nothing.
you can't do nothing. That's the
You have to-
worst
even
thing
if
that you can
it's
do.
the wrong rein that you
Correct.
hold, it's better than doing nothing.
Correct.
Right.
There's very few industries, very few business models that I can think of that won't be impacted by what's happening in the next few years.
So a good way to think of it is like you're on a multi-lane highway and you're in your vehicle and all these other vehicles are coming past you. So you've got to decide which vehicle to jump on, which lane to change to go a little bit faster and get there quicker.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter, you just got to keep getting into the faster lane.
Absolutely. And when it comes to this sort of lane change within business, sometimes who drives the vehicle needs to change. So sometimes you don't need to be the driver of the vehicle, especially if you've got a team, you've got a competent team, and you know that there's one or two people on the team who could embrace these technologies, who love working with these technologies. Make them the driver. Give them part of their role is, okay, you're going to be the one that's going to lead the way in terms of change in the organization. Now, the other thing is that old school thinking used to be, and this is even going back a few years, that digital transformation was the mandate, or was the big words that everyone was talking about, that organizations need to go through these big digital transformations, et cetera. There's been a lot of change, absolutely. But what's coming out now is that people are realizing that when you try and embark this huge organization-wide digital transformation, chances are it's going to fail. In fact, something like 85% of transformations fail. And the main reason is because often people are biting off too much and they're trying to do too much too quickly, and they haven't really thought it through. So you're actually, this is just my opinion and what I've seen and working with clients in the marketplace, is that you're actually better off having smaller incremental changes continuously rather than having this one big earth-shattering change. It might be like, in our case, we've got our custom CRM system. Well, the best thing that we can do is just constantly iterate. Then at some point in time, you might go, okay, well, you know what? The fine tuning is we need to do too much. We've maximized, so now we've got to swap systems, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you do that.
Yeah.
But
good analogy.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a Formula One car. You start the season with this car and this design, and during the year you tweak it and make it better and better and better, and you fix all the problems. But then at the end of the year, you go, you know what? We're going to start with a clean sheet and go one step ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you start with that clean sheet, you actually haven't started with the clean sheet, because you've got the other car. That's right. You go, okay, well, this is what I've had. This is what I don't want.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing with this incremental change, is that you're continuously playing with it. So I'll give you an example. So if you're a business owner and you know nothing about AI, for example, right, and you've never used it, okay, here's a basic thing that you can do. Go to Google, type in ChatGPT, bring it up, sign up. It's free, costs you nothing, and have a play with it. Okay, spend half an hour playing with it. Bring it up on your mobile phone and have a conversation. And you know where you could start. All right, here's the basics. Bring up ChatGPT on your phone, open up the chat model and go, hey, GPT, can you tell me how to use you? Tell me about you. Tell the technology to tell you.
A great starting point.
And it's a great starting point, and the thing is, being familiar with this technology means that being comfortable with the technology. And once you're comfortable with the technology, you realize it's actually not that difficult and not that scary.
No. And the great thing about AI right now is it's incredibly adept at a lot of things, but it's cheap. It's not expensive.
Oh, so much free stuff.
Yeah, so why not have a play?
Absolutely. And the thing is, the reason you need to be doing this today, and if you haven't done it, do it. Okay. The reason you've got to do it is because 2030, right, in 5 years, 6 years time, I'm expecting soon, based on what so far I've read and researched and what we're seeing, we're expecting even bigger changes. And like that quote from Justin Trudeau, the reality is that things are going to speed up even more. Now, just think of it this way. In about 2-3 years' time, we're going to have the humanoid robots coming onto the scene, right? So that's the next level up. Then we've got the autonomous vehicles. We're already seeing the taxi industry, looking at this going, okay, well, what is this going to mean for us? I mean, likes of Elon Musk, we can see what they're developing. And then we've got other technologies that a lot of people aren't aware of, things like blockchain technologies. I mean, we're looking at blockchain in the construction industry, what that's going to mean. So things are speeding up very, very quickly.
And we've got to stay abreast.
And we've got to stay abreast. And let me put it another way. If you own, you own a manufacturing of business, for argument's sake, right? You're turning over $1 million. If you're not aware of what's happening, then in 3 to 5 years' time, the competition that you have that is aware of it, that then starts investing in the humanoid robots to come and work in their facilities, right? They're going to take over. They're going to dominate. You're not going to be able to compete with a business like that. The only way you can compete is actually to compete like for like. You have to follow and you have to start adopting the technologies.
So basically, we shouldn't be afraid. We should be not burying our head in the sand and embracing the new opportunities and applying them as much as we can and doing a bit of trial and error.
Well, the only thing that you should be afraid of as a business owner is that if you look at your business today and if it's operating the exact same way as it did a year ago, be afraid.
That so many business owners are not prepared to do those things. I know, most of my business journey, I was afraid to adopt FPOS. I was afraid to put stock control in my computers. I was afraid to use the payroll program. I preferred a manual system. There's just so many things. Trust account was manual.
Well, you got to think though, where does fear come from? Where does the fear of this come from? It comes from the fear of the unknown, the fear of, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I don't know that space. It's too tech. It's too unknown. So how do you eliminate that? How do you combat that? That's by familiarization with the technology, by reading, by understanding, by putting your mind out there and going, okay, I'm going to devote half an hour a day, 15 minutes a day, and all I'm going to do is go to YouTube. If you don't want to read, no problems. Go to YouTube and type in
It's all there.
technology in manufacturing, in, I don't know, whatever industry you're in, and put yourself out there and put your mind out there.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you start doing that, you'll start seeing that the fear actually starts dissipating because you start becoming familiar with the terminologies and the technology. And the fear becomes excitement.
Yes.
Because then you see, oh, wow, look at the opportunities that we've got.
Because when I look at all the things I didn't want to adopt, that I did adopt, the efficiency that I get out of having, when the service station days, FPOS, I didn't have to take slips to the bank and bank them and worry about losing them. Payroll, just instant, did the calculation of superannuation, annual leave, holidays, whatever. All those things made life so much better. I couldn't go back to the old way.
Exactly.
So why was I reluctant to implement the change?
This goes back to the same thing that we have conversations about time and again. So we recently recorded a podcast with Hank de Jong from de Jong Reed. And we talked about the exact same thing there. It's about communication and engagement. So communicating with the advisors, communicating with your team, communicating in the form of understanding what's happening in the marketplace, in the industry and economies. And then it's also the engagement of engaging with the technologies, engaging with the advisors so that you're not putting your head in the sand. So the message really to business owners is just put yourself out there, regardless of the situation. Put yourself out there and be willing to learn, be willing to bring in new knowledge and bring your team on the journey so that they see that they can go off and make mistakes in technology, for example.
Do you think some business owners are embarrassed to have to try and navigate their way through new things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, ego comes into it, doesn't it? I'm the owner, head of this business. I've been running it for the past 20-something years or 10 years, and I'm already, at this level. Who are you to tell me? And I'd look foolish in front of my team if I didn't know X.
I know what it's like. Quite often I'm saying to the admin team, I can't use this Word document, or how do I do this PowerPoint or whatever it is. It's a bit embarrassing, you're reluctant to have to ask.
And then you avoid.
Yeah. So people have just got to shrug off that stupidity and stubbornness and just jump into the brave new world and get on board.
100% agree. So I guess the takeaway message from here is, and this is again going back to everything I've seen and read and part of my research, is that the best thing that you can do is put yourself out there and seek the knowledge, seek the information, allow your team rather to do the same thing. Let them bring in new ideas to you, explore the new ideas, experiment. And this stuff, it doesn't cost a lot of money. A lot of this stuff is actually free. Experiment with it internally. Make the mistakes, learn from them.
Your competitors will.
100%.
And you will be left in the dust.
100%. Thanks, Bruce.
All right.
That's good.
Go and have a look at a YouTube video about technology now.